Well, Bill Murphy, and that's a very rare name with the Murphy outfit, but yeah, so Bill Murphy, and so my dad was Bill Murphy, that's why I say it's rare, and my cousin was Bill Murphy too, so it's not a rare name actually. And so, yeah, I worked with Murphy Brothers and Shamrock Paving, and we can get into that as we go down the line with history. Well, my father's father moved black dirt, and he was called Black Dirt Murphy, and so my father worked for him. And so they would load, they had one little teeny, it was called a dump truck then, it would be actually like a pickup now. And they would load it by hand, and that was my father's job, is to load the pickup by hand with black dirt. And of course, during the Depression, they were truly in abject poverty. I remember him always saying he had one pair of pants. That was it. That was what he had. And it was that upbringing, I think, that made him the man that he is, you know, his integrity and his caring for people. I'll start with my dad, and so they had started the company just a little bit before World War II, and of course my dad went off to war, and his brother was Thornton Murphy, and he had children, so he didn't go to war, and so he stayed back and looked after the company. And so one of the things my dad did to kind of help the company out during that time when he was in the Pacific was he sent some of his GI money back to help the company out. And I remember him talking about even selling his cigarettes, because he didn't smoke. He was able to sell them and send that money back. So that's kind of helped the company out during those lean times. Then when he got back from the Pacific, World War II had ended, of course, he used the GI Bill to get a little bit of equipment. And so he got some equipment, and they started by excavating out basements. And I've got a picture right here. So here's a picture of one of my dad's first jobs, 1945, when he's back from World War II. He's using some of the equipment that he got from the GI Bill, and they're excavating a basement there. And so that was always on his wall in his office, you know. That was sort of his history and his starting point, you know, when he was doing the basements is how he got started. And then after that, he took bigger jobs, and he ended up doing missile bases. I think he took a flyer a little bit, because, you know, that's Corps of Engineer work, and there's some risk there, and they did okay with the missile bases, and from there they were able to keep continuing with the bigger jobs, and they did highway jobs and that kind of thing. He always kind of loved those missile bases, because that was you would dig a lot of rock and go really deep, and so he always liked those jobs. But he liked the dam relocation work too. And I have a picture here. What the Murphy brothers did is a lot of relocating railroad grades for the purpose of of the rising water of the dam. And so he did a lot of that work. And I don't know if this particular picture is that or a grade for a road, but you can see there's a lot of action in it. There's a couple cats pushing down to a single cat that then pushes into the belt. And so he's belt loading into the scrapers, and you can see that's a really quick way to move a lot of rock quickly. And he loved those jobs where you did a lot of rock jobs. I see Steve Gonzalez occasionally. Steve, of course, got his start at Murphy Brothers, and always liked my dad. My dad always liked him. And when I see him, he says, "What I want is a big rock job," and that's the way Dad felt. He missed it when the big rock jobs were gone. But obviously, the economy changed, and the big rock jobs are few and far between. My first recollection is of that time when some of the big grading jobs had stopped. It was about 1967, 1968. There was a sudden stop in road building. I think they were spending so much on the Vietnam War or some things like that, and the economy took a fairly steep dive, and so the company was fairly well extended, and they were in bad shape. They were very close to bankruptcy. And so I remember, that's a time in my life I always remember, because as contractors we know now that you put a bond and you put everything up on that bond, and my dad was just upfront with our kids that we could, with his kids, that we could lose our house. And so that made me very conservative from that point forward in my life. That was a very meaningful event in my life. But he had several equipment auctions. He pulled out of it. They had a couple good jobs again, a couple good road jobs. And so they came out of it, and they kept continuing in the road work, and he saw the paving end of the road work. He saw that what he thought that looked pretty easy compared to moving all this rock, and then you come off and you just top it off. Now pavers will totally disagree with that, but that's the way he felt, so he wanted to get into paving. So he started with an asphalt plant out at State Line, and then he bought out United Paving from Rusty Carbon, who was previous president as well, I believe. And so that was the origin of Shamrock Paving. And there were the two companies separate for a time, and they kind of worked together sometimes, kind of not. And so that's the genesis of the Shamrock Paving end of the business. He generally went to the national AGC meetings, especially when he was doing his big road jobs and that type of thing. And he tried to stay active as he got older, but as many people know, my brother George was injured on a job in Montana, and it was a very serious injury. It was really an act of God that he lived. I mean, serious. He was serious brain injury, and it really was a miracle that he lived. And that sort of changed the path for my dad drastically. He obviously wanted to be able to take care of George and see him through. So he pulled back from the political action committees and those type of things. So from that point forward, he was not as involved in the AGC, but he was always a big believer in the AGC. We are the AGC.